Hello, BookTube. It's Tuesday, and that means Tag Tuesday. And in true Southern Belle fashion, Hannah at Hannah's Books has invited us all to a literary dinner party. She created the literary dinner party tag, and she tagged me. Why she would do that, I have no idea. I had, back when I was a bit younger, I had a bit of a reputation, both in Boston and New York, as being a decidedly mixed bag if you invite me to a literary soiree, especially a dinner party of any kind. On the positive side, I am something of an extrovert, and not only that, but I am really good at getting a whole room talking and laughing. I, in fact, love to do that. In true extrovert fashion, I draw strength from that. It doesn't require strength for me to do that. It gives me strength to do that. Uh, and a lot of hostesses uh, in New York and Boston, and also for a few years in Washington D.C., invariably value that. That is incredibly valuable to have somebody. You, when you're making your list ahead of time. I used to know a particular Washington hostess uh, who would say, when I'm making my list, I want category X, category Y, category Z, and the golden goose is that kind of person, the kind of person who can keep things going, who can smooth things over, who doesn't require pampering, who's going to help you as a hostess when you're not in the room. And that particular hostess told me that sometimes you invite people like that just for those skills, even though you're not particularly fond of them. On the positive side, there's that. But on the negative side, uh, well, there are two. Always were two elements on the negative side. Number one is that, as you know, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, my whole existence is ruled by three absolute givens. It's always too cold. The music is always too loud. And the third one is I am always hungry. In other words, you cannot feed me enough food. And if it's sitting right there in front of me, I'm going to just keep eating. It's a canine trait. And that can be a little awkward when it's not some kind of, barn style buffet. And the second awkward thing you'll also be able to see coming a mile away, which is that if my host has dogs, they're going to get most of my attention, and they are going to shatter the training that has been lavished on them with a large amount of money and a huge amount of time and patience. They're going to shatter it. It's going to seem like they were never trained at all. They lose their cookies when they're around me. And the feeling is very much mutual. So that always caused people to invite me with a little bit of wariness. But I never, at those literary soirees, I never actually got any book recommendations, but I was always in a position to give them. And as far as interesting bookish conversations go, oh my, many, many, many interesting bookish conversations, including with a large number of people whose names you would know in the bookish community, including one we just lost, Ben Bova. I was at a literary dinner party 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and he was there, and we had a wonderful talk. It wasn't about science fiction at all, but we had a wonderful talk. Uh, so yeah, that part has happened often. Question number two: which authors, living or dead, would you invite to a dinner party? These invites can go out one at a time or in groups, so various authors would get to meet each other. Uh, as I've mentioned, I've encountered this question in innumerable tags, and it's a little bit unfair when my answers are a little bit unhelpful because I can't look at a hypothetical like this without just wanting a certain lineup of people for personal reasons, not for I think Shakespeare would be interesting to talk to or anything like that. I've listed James Merrill, George Higgins, Julia Child, Samuel Eliot Morison, Douglas Shantucci, the now late Douglas Shantucci, the historian. Uh, I would not. I would not invite Frank Conroy. The others maybe. Douglas could be a bit of an ingrown toenail, and James Merrill. It would depend on what age he was. I would probably want a younger James Merrill, somewhere around his 30s or 40s. The older James Merrill that you would get would be someone who might, out of sheer ennui, take delight in offending someone just to see if they could stir up the evening. And that you don't want that either. And Samuel Eliot Morison also could be a bit of an endeavor. But I wouldn't. Even so, they all could shine. They could all be useful. Was that Washington hostess? That was her word for guests that she liked. Was they were useful. uh, But Frank Conroy, much as I would like it, I wouldn't do it because that would be disastrous. Uh, Question number 3, which characters would you like to invite? From fiction, I presume. And for me, it would be all 101 of the Dalmatians. Question number 4, have you ever wanted to invite a historical figure after reading a biography or autobiography of that person? Who would it be? Yes, actually, one came to mind. Years ago, I read, in quick tandem, I read, why am I all washed out like that? Oh, God. Still working on the lighting here in this revamped location. Will it help if I move around? No? Back? Forward? Years ago, in quick tandem, I read Nicholas Shakespeare's big biography of Bruce Chatwin, the famous travel writer and art snob, who I never knew. I never met. I knew lots of people that knew him, in every sense of that word, but I never met him myself. I read Nicholas Shakespeare's biography of him, which is excellent. And I read Under the Sun, a big, generous collection of his letters. And the combination of those two things, he would definitely be someone that I would want to sit down at a dinner party with and talk about. Who knows what we'd talk about? Probably travel rather than books. Question number 5 is, what would you serve at one of these parties for questions 2 or 3, or 2 to 4? Or perhaps what would one of your literary guests bring in if you hosted a potluck meal? And in this case, I was reminded of a classic Jewish joke. What does a Jewish wife prepare for Thanksgiving? What does she make for Thanksgiving? Reservations. I would get takeout. Of course I would. Or I would encourage other people to do so as well, especially if this literary gathering were held, as so many have been held, here at Hyde Cottage. There's a really nice, friendly fry shop one door away that has a huge menu. Something for everybody on that menu, no matter how picky, no matter how many imaginary allergies you have, no matter what, no matter how much of a fuss you make like a little baby about the food that you put in your mouth that goes down into your belly and then comes out the other end, no matter how much of a little baby fuss you make about that food, the place 2 doors over can easily accommodate. And I would gladly do that. I've done that many, many, many times, and that would be fine. That takes the stress off. I am not a culinary master, and I wouldn't trust the people I would invite. I wouldn't trust with their potluck, so I would say takeout. Question number 6: what is your favorite meal scene in a book or in the screen adaptation of a book? For me, it's going to be an answer I've given before when it comes to food in literature, and that it's predictable, but it's the dinner scene in Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune. The family Atreides has just moved to the desert planet Dune. They have been ordered to relocate there. I'm losing all dimension of my face here. Probably that's a good thing. They've been ordered to relocate there. It's an obvious trap. They don't know their future, and they are trying very quickly to get the lay of the land, literally for survival's sake. And a lot of that is done in a virtuoso scene that Frank Herbert writes, where the first person limited view, he goes inside the thoughts of each character as he goes around the table and jumps around at random in order to orchestrate the tension of the moment beautifully. Just beautifully done. It's so beautifully done that you actually lose track of the fact that it's actually an info dump, that it's an exposition dump. It's one of the most artful ones I've ever read in any kind of genre. So I'm going to choose that one. Let's see here. Question number 7. Dinner parties aren't the only times people share food and drink. Are there literary scenes you love where characters get together over brunch, afternoon tea, picnics, cocktail parties, etc.? Would a religious ceremony count? The first thing that came to mind was the Last Supper, the version in the New Testament where Jesus knows that Judas is going to betray him. And he tells him, go and do what you're going to do quickly. And you read the story just fresh as a narrative, you think, well, all he had to do was say something to the other men in the room. All he had to do was say, don't let him leave, or here's what he plans to do, or whatnot, and let the course of action take a completely different turn. In the particular version of the Last Supper that I'm thinking about, he knows what Judas is going to do, and he lets him do it anyway. It's one of these great, path not taken moments in the New Testament, much like in the most famous example of them all, in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus outright asks God, if it's possible for us not to do this, now that I'm so close, now that I know what's coming and I'm so close to it, if it's possible to let this cup pass from my lips, then, I won't complain. You, of course, get the last word. Your will, not mine, be done. But the thing that Jesus is suggesting at that moment is earth-shaking. It's a thing that a lot of Christians that I've talked to know the scene, of course. They know the moment. But they don't pause to think about what it means. Jesus has had a mission prepared since the fall of Adam. He's been walking around Galilee for 3 years, healing people, preaching the good word, and warning people about the coming of the kingdom of heaven. And here at the last minute, with the sacrifice that is the linchpin of it all, he kind of wants to back out of fear, out of pure human fear. I think it's an incredible moment, but there's another branch fork moment like that in the Last Supper narrative that is the most famous one that people know, because Jesus knows that his betrayer is right there. So I'm going to choose that one. I don't know if Passover counts, but I'm going to choose that. Then question number 8, name one of your favorite cringeworthy dinner party scenes in a book or adaptation. Here I'm going to pick Brideshead Revisited. A couple of moments in Brideshead Revisited over Easter, when 19-year-old Charles Ryder has become an intimate at Brideshead. He's become an intimate of the family of Sebastian Flyte, the friend of his from Oxford with whom he has fallen in love. He's become intimate with their family. He's come to know Sebastian's older brother, Brideshead. He's come to know Sebastian's mother, and the two girls, little Julia little Cordelia and Julia, who will later become another love of his life. He spends time at their palatial country home, and it becomes clear to him in the first part of Brideshead Revisited that he can't save Sebastian. There's twin forces at work. One is Sebastian's taste for alcohol. He is an incipient alcoholic. And the other is his family's indifference to him, combined with his mother's tendency to smother him. Those things together spell doom. Charles Ryder realizes they spell doom for his friend. And in the dinner parties, the dinner scenes that I'm thinking of, it becomes suddenly clear that Lady Marchmain that Sebastian's mother has given orders to the servants and to the head butler that he is not to have alcohol, that he's to ask permission first, and that maybe none of the guests or other family members can have it either unless it's carefully rationed and all eyes are on him, surreptitiously but still unbearably. It becomes obvious in the course of these dinners that I'm thinking of that he is a watched person, and as Charles Ryder tries to tell his mother, that's the surest way to make things worse, is to give him that impression. But she went through this experience before with her husband, and that has convinced her that what she's doing is right. And there comes a horrible moment. It's not a dinner scene, although it is presaged by one. It's presaged by Sebastian showing up just horribly drunk at supper, and his brother knows it. Charles Ryder knows it, and they try to shield Lady Marchmain from the reality of it. But the real moment is a fox hunt. The family goes on a fox hunt, and Sebastian surprises everybody by wanting to go along. He has a plan. He doesn't plan on going fox hunting. He plans on ditching the hunt as soon as he's away from the house and going to the nearest pub, the nearest village, and getting drunk, just soaking all day in alcohol. But he needs money to do it. The family has stopped his accounts. They've stopped his bank account, specifically because his mother doesn't want him to descend into alcoholism. And he asks Charles for money, and Charles gives it to him, knowing what will happen. And it does. And there's a wonderful scene. I want to see if I can call it up on the mini-me here, because any chance I can get to read from this book is going to be fine by me. Because this is the moment when Charles Ryder realizes it's been absolute euphoric love for the first part of this book, and this is the moment where he realizes that he can't help his friend. There's a break. And the idyll of Brideshead, of the house, is broken. And we have, next morning, I said to Sebastian, tell me honestly, do you want me to stay on here? No, Charles, I don't believe I do. I'm no help? No help. So I went to make excuses to his mother. There's something I must ask you, Charles. Did you give Sebastian money yesterday? Yes. Knowing how he was likely to spend it? Yes. I don't understand it, she said. I simply don't understand how anyone can be so callously wicked. She paused, but I do not think she expected any answer. There was nothing I could say unless we were to start all over again on that familiar, endless argument. I'm not going to reproach you, she said. God knows it's not for me to reproach anyone. Any failure in my children is my failure. But I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can have been so nice in so many ways and then do something so wantonly cruel. I don't understand how we all liked you so much. Did you hate us all the time? I don't understand how we deserved it. I was unmoved. There was no part of me remotely touched by her distress. It was as I had often imagined being expelled from school. I almost expected to hear her say, I have already written to inform your unhappy father. But as I drove away and turned back in the car to take what promised to be my last view of the house, I felt that I was leaving part of myself behind, and that wherever I went afterwards, I should feel the lack of it, and search for it hopelessly, as ghosts are said to do, frequenting the spots where they buried material treasures without which they cannot pass their way to the nether world. I shall never go back, I said to myself. A door had shut, the low door in the wall I had sought and found in Oxford. Open it now, and I shall find no enchanted garden. I had come to the surface, into the light of common day and the fresh sea air, after long captivity in the sunless coral palaces and waving forests of the ocean bed. I had left behind me, what? Youth? Adolescence? Romance? The conjuring stuff of these things, the young magician's compendium, that neat cabinet where the ebony wand had its place beside the delusive billiard balls, the penny that folded double, and the feather flowers that could be drawn into a hollow candle. I have left behind illusion, I said to myself. Henceforth I shall live in a world of 3 dimensions with the aid of my 5 senses. I have since learned that there is no such world. But then, as the car turned out of sight of the house, I thought it took no finding, but lay all about me at the end of the avenue. Of course, Charles is wrong. He will be back a couple of times to Brideshead. But that is pretty excruciating. And when you read it, when you read the scenes at Brideshead of Sebastian's descent into drunkenness, you feel very strongly that Waugh is transcribing a lot of these things, that the author, Evelyn Waugh, is transcribing a lot of these things from things that he's seen. But anyway, don't get me started. I don't want to get started talking about Brideshead Revisited, or I'll never stop. So we'll go on to question number 9. When the pandemic ends, what will you serve at your first dinner party or to take the first potluck that you attend? I am not going to spoil the festivities of this tag by pointing out that the pandemic is not going to end. That is a psychological compensation method that we are all using, and I understand it. I understand it just fine, and I agree with it. I want everybody to have that. But vaccines aren't sure things, and they aren't coming for a while, and even if you don't get COVID-19, you stand a good chance of getting COVID-20, for which this vaccine will be no good. While we are talking about when this all ends and things go back to normal, somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, a teenager is eating a raw animal, a lizard, a marmot, a rat, a bat, something, a raw animal or something on a kebab stick that has just been charred on the outside and is still mostly raw on the inside. And he's not thinking one way or another about exotic viruses, but he is patient 0 somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa right now. Patient 0 is flirting with another viral load that has never introduced itself to human beings, against which humans have no defense. But anyway, I'm not going to ruin the spirit of the thing here. I'm going to revert to my normal answer, which is takeout. Takeout. I'm not going to bring any food. What would I bring? Alpo? I'm not going to bring any food to a literary dinner party. I'm not going to do that. Why? I'm going to be plenty busy talking to people and getting people to talk to me and laughing with people and getting other people laughing and studiously avoiding the quiet corner of the room where Hannah herself has gone to have quiet, broody, intellectual conversations with Eudora Welty and Hannah Arendt And that Sam Sachs character from the Wall Street Journal. I have seen those corners where those brainy people go. And when there's a group of people, a party, especially when there's a DC hostess, one of the most formidable forms of life in the history of the world, I'm not going to retreat into that corner and talk about the meaning of things, for Pete's sake. Not when there are Borscht Belt jokes to tell. No, I'd bring takeout. When I lived in just outside of Washington D.C., I was known to quite a few Washington D.C. hostesses of the time, and some of them valued the fact that I could control the dogs. One hostess in particular, who's no longer with us, said the same thing that as a blue-haired Boston Brahmin Biddy Bean used to tell me for decades. Used to say, look, I'm making my husband come to this thing. He doesn't like any of the people who are coming here. And he's insisting that his stupid dogs come along, and they're horrible creatures. I want you to come along and take care of them. You keep them under control and out of the way, and I'll overlook your manifest shortcomings. There was actually a wedding that I went to where the same stipulation was put forward. You control the dogs and you can come. But in cases like that, if there's some sort of potluck, I would either get takeout or, more likely, I would just slip my hostess $100. There's virtually nothing that a $100 bill won't fix. So I would just do that. Here you go. There's my food allowance for you. I'm not gonna. What am I gonna do? Make my special tenderloin souffle with just a hint of asparagus leaves? Please. And then question number 10: which booktubers would you like to invite, i.e., tag, to this literary dinner? And in her own version of the tag, Hannah mentioned something that struck a chord with me. Of course, it's a little melancholy, which is that it would be nice if this weren't just booktube tagging. It would be nice if we were taking the train up and down the eastern seacoast, or taking the bus wherever, and meeting each other and doing this in person. It's a little melancholy that this plague has made this impossible. In her video, Hannah says something that I want to stress myself. She says, if this is ever all over, you are all welcome to come here. And I say the same thing. I was pretty vocal about this before there was a pandemic. I am still vocal about this. Hyde Cottage is open when it's safe. If it's ever safe again in any kind of conventional sense, we will have hootenannies here, and they will be fun. I can provide you with a list of witnesses and people who been to those hootenannies and enjoyed them. So here's to that day. Here's to that day. And I do have some people that I want to tag. I want to tag Mark Richardson, of course, of Richardson Reads, because he's the perfect template of a booktuber who became a good friend and whose conviviality was open. No conviviality here at this end, because at his end there are gigantic old wooden floors, and there are kids who need tending, and there are rooms everywhere, and wonderful creaky floors and ceilings. You want to get, when we hung out together in person, we wanted to get the bean into the car and get back on the road back up to Vermont, where things make a lot more sense than they do in Boston. So I'm going to tag Mark, absolutely. Also Courtney Faraday, America's Jewish mother, and the middle of the book march. I don't know that you've been tagged on this, but even you would be welcome here. James Holder, of course. Let's see here. Oh, I also want to continue to tag newbie, a booktube newbie, someone who's just started their channel. Here I want to tag Sarah at Who Am I Among the Pages, or Who I Am Among the Pages. I'll leave a link to all of these down below. I can't tell. Looking at the camera, it looks like I'm completely washed out here. I can't tell if I really am, or maybe that's going to be fixed or whatnot. I'm clearly going to have to work on lighting here. Well, I, of course, will also want to tag my lawfully wedded Reddit wife, Britta Bowler. So feel free to do this tag as well, because it's it tugs at the heartstrings, right? I mean, a tag like this does. We would like, here in this little corner of BookTube, the goal has always been the community and not anything else. And the natural progression of that is that you meet somebody, and then you make comments, you leave comments, you receive them, then you email, maybe Voxering, maybe book groups for those of you who don't smell, and then you meet in person. And that would be possible for a lot of us if it weren't for this pandemic. So it's a little melancholy. God bless Hannah for bringing us together, at least in this capacity. So that's your tag for Tag Tuesday. It turned out that the mini me behaved itself perfectly. So I'm going to wrap this up for now and deal with these lighting issues. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.